Okay, so I was bleeding the brakes of the old Daimler and noticed that the shock absorber on the near side here was leaking. They always leak, but it did seem worse than normal. So I've taken it off. It's quite a pain to get off because this joint here, I just couldn't get it off the taper joint. I'll try it again now. So I've actually had to take off the bottom plate from the spring, undo the two U-bolts and get that plate off and take the whole lot off together. Anyway, so it's off now. I've cleaned up slightly, but I'll clean up a bit more and we'll have to take it apart and see what's going on. I suspect it's fine. I don't think these early shock absorbers have a seal, or at least not a proper seal. They just rely on a close fit between the spindle and the housing and the bearings to allow a slight weep of oil out either side. They don't actually have a proper sort of lip seal, but we'll see. I'm not sure whether that's the case with this one, but so we'll check it out and see what's going on. These are available as a exchange for about 100 quid, and they come in apparently 3 different uprated versions. I thought the uprating would just be that a seal had been fitted, that they've machined the housing and fitted a proper seal, but apparently that's only part of the story. They claim to have 10% uprated and 20% and 30%, which seems kind of bizarre to me. I assume that means the damping rate, although it's not specified. But surely you can change the damping rate just by changing the viscosity of the oil. So I don't really understand what they can be doing. Presumably it's some change to the valve down here at the bottom. But anyway, we'll check that out and see where we go from there. Okay, so I'll clean this Armstrong shock absorber up a bit more, and it's working fine, it would seem. It's stiff in both directions. The damping seems to be pretty much the same in both directions. I was thinking that the valve at the bottom might bias the damping to be more on the bounce rather than the rebound, for instance, or vice versa. But it feels pretty uniform to me, so yeah, we'll take the valve out at some point and see where we go from there. I suspect getting the spin out is going to be quite difficult. I might not even bother. Probably needs to take out this blanking cap on the back, apart from everything else, and maybe drive it through. Yeah, not sure. I think I'll probably leave that. Just clear out what I can, clean out what I can. Make sure the valve's okay. Have a look under here, make sure it's all clean inside, and drain the oil out. Flush it through and refill it with oil. As chance would have it, I've actually got some original Armstrong hydraulic oil. I don't know what viscosity this is. So it's got the MG type one on the back, and this one on the front. So yeah, interesting. So it's not sort of go. Yes, it's quite thin. Interesting, on the back of this tin, so there's no indication I can see of the viscosity. It just says contents 1 pint. It says important. When servicing Armstrong shock absorbers, it is of primary importance that the correct type of fluid is used, or the shock absorber will not function correctly. It's important to note that unless the instruction is strictly adhered to, shock absorbers cannot qualify for replacement under the terms of the guarantee. So there you go. You must use this fluid, otherwise my guarantee will not be honoured. So that's pretty worrying, isn't it? Okay, let's try and get this nut off. 11/16 nut. easy bit. Right, I'm going to try the old flexing the joint technique. I've tried this on the car already with 2 hammers, trying to hammer either side simultaneously just to pop the taper, but it didn't work. I'm trying not to get it too hot. I've actually got a spare link which I've bought, but if possible I don't want to necessarily damage this one and burn the rubber out, so I'll try and get it warm but not too hot. That's basically the WD-40 burning, I think, rather than the rubber burning. Yeah, not very hot yet. Yeah, that's up to 100 degrees or so. Yay, done it. Okay, so that's potentially reusable, I would say, although I probably won't. I'll put the new one on, seeing as I've got one. But one interesting thing I noticed is that there's some witness marks on here. There's some rubbing been going on. The most recent one is there, obviously, but there's a bit of a dent there as well, which is rusted over. So it's also been rubbing for some time at different places, which is slightly weird. That must be on the back of the spring, so, or rather on the side of the spring, because this fits this way around, and the spring runs under here, so it must be rubbing on the side of the spring. I'll check out and find out exactly where it is. That's still warm. And see where we go from there. This is just a rocker arm, pivoted in the centre. It's got a pivot on either end of a crank inside there, which connects to 2 pistons in 2 chambers. And so as this rotates, one piston falls and the other rises. So essentially, as the lever moves, these pistons are rocking backwards and forwards and exchanging fluid, oil, between the 2 chambers. But to get from one to the other, it needs to go through this valve. So there's a valve arrangement in here which restricts the oil flow in a controlled way and provides the damping that the car manufacturer's looking for. So together with the viscosity of the oil and the setup of this valve and the spring rates and so on, so the damping can be changed, and it could potentially be different in one direction than the other, which I was expecting to find here, but it seems to be the same. So Oops. Okay, there's the valve. Right. So it looks as if we've got a couple of one spring. I'm going to have to make a new gasket for this. There you go. Not too bad. So this is actually some kind of rubber gasket, which is a bit surprising. I thought it would be some sort of paper, sort of gasket material, but it is actually rubber. Amazing. Pretty well stuck on. We have a proper scraper somewhere. There we go. See, it's some kind of textured rubber material. I don't know if you can see the texture, but I can see what the texture used to be on the places that haven't been crushed. Okay, so I've got a dial indicator set up, and it's mounted to the vise. This is on a radius of, let's say, 85 mil. Okay, so I don't know if you can see the gauge. I'm being careful not to move this lever up and down, but there it goes from 18 at one extreme, on the other side to about 11, so I'd say 11, maybe 11 and a half. Okay, so I was getting about 13 thou movement on that 85 mil radius, which I reckon, bringing it down to the shaft, gives about 3 thou on the actual bush, so 3 thou of play. Okay, so here's the valve. So this is the outside end, which has a seal here. It's threaded, obviously, recess there, another seal, and there's 3 holes. 1, 2, 3. Could be 4 actually. It is 4. There's 4 holes which come through into this area here, and then this pin fits into there, and this area here can seal onto the inside of that recess below the outlets of these 4 holes. So when oil is coming in this side, in other words this piston on this side is descending, oil is forced through the 4 holes and can bypass this plug and come straight out of this hole in the middle. Meanwhile, this little collar arrangement with a seat on it, it's actually also got a groove. I don't know if you can see there's a slight groove there, and also it's got 2 diameters. This diameter is slightly larger than this diameter. This diameter is a good fit on the shaft here, spindle. The other one isn't, so in other words there's a clearance on this side. And again there are 1, 2, 4 holes around the circumference of that seat, because then there's a tapered seat there. So this notch is just a relief, I think, so that the seat can't seal 100%. So that seals onto this conical seat here, with the note that that little nick does actually break the seal. So where are we? So this fits into here. So we've got oil comes in here, it can escape here, but it in fact it can't normally because this is held down, blocks it. So while that's closed, the only way oil can get from here up this way is to come through the 4 holes, so it's quite restricted. This little piece here is held down by a spring, compression spring, which has a nut holding it on. So this, I guess the pressure is too high. If this oil is coming here too fast, it can lift this seat and bypass these holes. But the pressure has to be enough to compress this spring, which actually is quite stiff. So I guess at low speed it will come through the 4 holes. At higher speeds it will start to lift this seat. So that's that way. There is a spring, well, there's several washers on here. The brass washer, and then a steel washer, and then another compression spring. This all fits into the cylinder down here. So oil from this piston, the opposite one to this one, can flow down through the 4 holes in this part and through and come out of the other cylinder. So the only way that can happen, I think, trying to work this out as I speak, is through those holes. Pressure's not going to do anything to lift this off. So in fact the damping rate is different in the 2 directions, I think. I think I must doing it by hand on the bench there. In both directions it's coming through these 4 holes and these 4 holes. So it's relatively well, it's identical in both directions. But if there's a sudden shock, the pressure rises enough, it's going to lift this valve off its seat against this spring, and the oil will pass through more quickly. So it can get a higher flow rate if it's got enough pressure, more than I was applying by hand, I think. And in extreme cases, I guess, it can also lift this inner valve as well against this spring. So in fact there's 2 rate changes by the looks of it. Both, actually no. Ah, there we go. So I think this spring allows this outer seat to lift, and the smaller spring effectively allows this smaller seat, this inner seat, to open. So yes, one will work in one direction, one will work in the other. So yeah, so it is possible, by the looks of it, to change the spring rate, so the damping rate, in the two different directions, bounce and rebound. So yeah, that's quite neat, I guess. So I don't know what this idea of having shock absorbers that are rated 10% or up-rated supposedly, 10% above normal and 20%, 30%. I can only imagine they just change these springs. So there is adjustment obviously on this nut, but no adjustment on the other side unless you shim up the spring. Okay, so valve assembly is back in again. Put some lock ties on the thread just to hopefully keep it in place and seal the thread as well, in addition to the rubber seal that's already there. There's enough in here, but still it's good to go. There must be some way for the oil to get from the top side of the cylinder, or the piston rather, to the bottom. There's some bubbles coming up. There we go, yeah, it's looking better now. Feeling better. Okay, so I'm ready to put the cap back on, and then I'll fill it up with some oil to bring the level up. But I was thinking I would make a gasket for it out of some gasket material that I do have, but thinking about it, I think I'm going to use silicon Loctite 5910. So I think a thin bead of this on the cap. I'll oil this surface. Do it now. And then just rest the cap onto the top and let the bead of silicon squish down a bit. Leave it to set for a few days and then tighten it down, and hopefully that will seal it obviously, and also be removable in future without too much hassle. Okay, let's make sure it's lined up. This is going to be slightly stuck. Hopefully the oil has stopped it from sticking fully. Oop, there we go. Yeah, looks okay. It's a reasonable layer of silicone on there. It hasn't pressed out into the centre too much. I just trim down the edge with a scalpel and put it back on. So I guess I can refit the cap and get the thing working again. Let's top this up. I'll leave a bit of airspace in there. Right, there you go. Okay, so it's got 4 coats of painting at the end. Take that off. Put a bit of stuff in here, just with newspaper to keep the taper clean. Good, so it's been lying on its side for 24 hours and no sign of any oil leaking from anywhere. At least of all the top that I've just put the sealant on. So yeah, good to go I think. Okay, so time to put the shock absorber back on. Yeah, this drop link, which goes up this way, was definitely rubbing on the spring here, so I'll try and make sure that this is as far across that way as I can. So just a tiny bit of copper grease on this taper, just to help it release when it needs to be taken off again. This one doesn't need, well, I might as well put some anyway, doesn't need it, but this is just clamped up at the bottom end. Okay, so I'm going to lower this hub onto this axle stand gently and just get the neutral position for the suspension. I can get this jack to come down, there we go. Okay, everything looks safe. Okay, the jack's still there, but yes, that's the neutral position. So I'll tighten up this linkage now. Okay, so that's all back together, and yeah, I don't know whether I should have forked out the money for a new one, but I think the one's okay. It's certainly working correctly, so it's got some oil in it now. Not that it didn't before, but it's good. Okay, thanks for watching.